Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and I've got to do this fast because I'm really late in getting this done today. Yes, I'm doing a day and date of the actual release. I've got a few hours left before the day ends, otherwise I can't call it every Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll have lost. And today's episode is the 2005 end of the prequel trilogy, 2 hour and 22-minute long Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Yeah, a movie I've seen plenty of times before. Yeah. and honestly, this is part of an era in Star Wars that did not fare well with fans. And it's often been said that nobody hates Star Wars like Star Wars fans. Star Wars fans tend to react harshly to just about anything that doesn't already fit in their own brain canon. And there's a lot weighing on this because, one, it's the third chapter of the trilogy, wrapping everything up, and also it is the most tightly connected to the continuity of the original trilogy than the other two. The other two had a little bit more room to play, and that was to the benefit of George Lucas, but also to the detriment of fans who just didn't care about seeing Darth Vader and Boba Fett as kids. It's just not a thing that anybody really, really wanted, for the most part, and people were very vocal about it. I'm not a hater. I love Star Wars in all of its forms, good and bad, and I will always find something good to talk about Star Wars, regardless of how bad the rest of the fandom thinks it is. That being said, this is easily the best of the three films in the prequel trilogy. Went from 1999 to 2005 here. You have to understand that just watching this film, it's a culmination of a story and the characters and things, stories we'd only had hinted at in the original trilogy. Once Return of the Jedi came out, there was all these talks about, will George Lucas do another trilogy? Well, I hear he's going to do 12 total films. It's going to be huge, and he's going to do them really soon. And then George is like, no, I think I'm done. And for 16 years, we didn't have any new Star Wars films, if you don't count the re-release of the original trilogy with more special effects, because George is always tweaking them. And ILM has that power. It sort of was, it was a test run for a lot of the stuff that they were trying to do with the prequels. I don't think for those of you who weren't around, if any of you are watching this, the excitement, the tension, the joy, just the insanity that came along with this prequel trilogy leading up to it was intense. Just say intense. I was just seeing a thing on my feed that came up today about how, by the way, we're in April here. That was the time in which these films, well, at least Phantom Menace started rolling out toward the end of this month in 1999. By the way, next year is the 20th anniversary of this film. 20 years since this movie came out. And since then, we've seen follow-ups to the story in the Obi-Wan series and, of course, in the Clone Wars series and other things like that. And I know my brain's all over the place on this because I want to capture everything. And I also need to get this done and uploaded before the day ends. I'm saying many things at the same time, and I'm sorry. When it comes to this, the intensity for the fandom to want this movie to stick the landing was pretty huge. We wanted to. We knew the story that at some point Anakin and Obi-Wan were going to be fighting. They were going to be battling, not necessarily to the death. Not that by the end of it, the more and more I watch these, I kind of realize. And I know there's a lot of you Star Wars fans who have picked apart every iota of every piece of dialogue and scene and everything else. It was a battle to the death in many ways, metaphorically, but in the sense that by the time this movie is over, spoilers for those of you who haven't watched it, seriously, if you haven't watched this film, stop watching this. I'm going to talk about it. Go back and start watching the Star Wars films. From episode 4 or episode 1, however you want to start it, don't care, doesn't matter. watch them, enjoy them, have a great time. I'm going to pick apart a few things here. By the time this movie is over, Obi-Wan believes that he's killed his friend. He left him for dead. Kind of think that, he didn't want to make the killing blow, even though he kind of crippled his friend by chopping off his legs. He left him to burn to death on a lava planet. That was excruciating. And the last time Obi-Wan saw him, he assumed that his friend burned alive. He was on fire, screaming curses at him, as he did. The sheer will of Anakin and his stubbornness is the only thing that pretty much kept him alive, beyond the dark side of the Force, to a certain degree. So by the time this is over, Obi-Wan heads back to Padme, and Padme is dying. And I know a lot of people make a big deal about her just dying of a broken heart. She didn't die of a broken heart. It's very clear in the way George won't come right out and say these things, but the way these things are shot, it is very clear that Padme, even though she's perfectly healthy, as one of the medical droids say, she's dying. She's lost the will to live. It's not necessarily her will. It's being sapped from her to keep Anakin alive through the power of the Emperor. And he kind of kept, he definitely knows how to do that. In order to, everything has been done to manipulate Anakin to his side. Everything over the last 3 movies has been done to bring Anakin to the point of being Darth Vader. Whether he was going to be in a black costume and mostly more machine than man, that was, but one way or the other, Anakin, the chosen one, the one who was able to create life from midichlorians. Oh, I wonder who did that. Is also the same guy who took the life of Padme to keep his apprentice alive, Darth Vader, and also, it's just, and Padme died saying there's still good in him, not realizing that he's dead. Like, as far as Obi-Wan knows, Anakin's dead. He didn't tell her that Anakin's dead before she died. So there's nothing that says that, oh, she died of a broken heart, not because Anakin died, because Obi-Wan killed him. No, she died of a broken heart because of what Anakin chose, but more so she had the life pulled from her. Just watch that scene again. Watch how it's cut back and forth, how they cry out as she is giving birth and his life is being torn from him and reassembled in a sense as what we know as Darth Vader. The whole visual cloak and armor and helmet sealing shut. That was the culmination of all the prequel films. Some of us wish that they'd gotten to that sooner, but I think also, no, you kind of have to build to that. If that had been the first thing that happened, okay, if that had been the ending of the first film, holy crap, I can see how the second and third films would have been pretty intense. Crazy intense. With our hero already grown up in a sense, turning to the dark side, but we wouldn't have gotten to know him. And there was no telling that we'd have a Clone Wars series to get to know Anakin a little bit better. Yeah, I understand. Nothing against Hayden or Natalie or Ewan. The idea is that everybody has a problem with their dialogue and their presentation of dialogue. It is meant to be presented at a time, and I know I'm being an apologeticist here, but it's meant to be done at a time to reflect a time of some older type of movies where the dialogue was presented in such a way. I get that. It's not meant to sound like modern day film dialogue. It's actually an intentional choice. I know it's strange. I know we don't get it, but it still feels. I still cringe when they're flirting. The kids are flirting. When Hayden and Natalie are. I love them both, but I still cringe, even though I know it's not supposed to be so cringy. What are you gonna do? And there's still, and maybe the special effects in this haven't aged as well as I had hoped, because he'd done everything so much on a green screen stage, pretty much feels like 90% of it. Yeah, I mean, there's still practical effects throughout, especially, the makeup and some of the droids. R2 is digital for a lot of his scenes, but I still, yeah, you can sort of, it sort of sucks the life out of some scenes because they just feel so sterile and just not real. It's sort of, I've not even noticed how you can see some of the times the outline of the actors against the digital backdrops that are inserted after they're acting with the green screen. It still feels like watching the original version of Star Wars: A New Hope, before it was A New Hope, and seeing those boxes around the TIE fighters as they flew through space. It's faint, but you still see the capture boxes from the old style effects. It kind of has that feeling now that it's almost 20 years old, and you can sort of see the seams in the tapestry, but it doesn't draw away from the story. And and yeah, people complain about the story too. And by the way, it is a whole lot more political than anybody will ever give it credit for. It's not unintentional. It's not accidental. It's way too relevant to today. It is actually really super, super duper relevant to today in many ways. Not one-to-one, but manipulating people in a certain way and then pointing at the other people for doing the very thing that you had done in order to bolster your power. That's a thing. It's what was I? Did I finish that story about the fact that, yes? Sorry, I didn't finish the story from a while ago. And I said that when originally the first episode 1 came out, it sucked away about $293 million from the economy because of so many people calling in sick the next day after seeing the film, which premiered, I believe, on a Thursday night. It's been so long, I can't remember which. I know exactly where I saw it. I know I saw it at midnight. And that was a time when we all had to see the movies at midnight when they premiered, and we had to stand in line sometimes for days, not just for the film, but for the tickets. There was no reserved seating. There were no digital screenings, although I did see Attack of the Clones digitally. It was for the first time. That was the first Star Wars film I'd ever seen digitally projected in Florida at what is now Disney Springs. It used to be downtown Disney as well, back down in Florida. And then I saw Revenge of the Sith in Westwood, in Hollywood, at the Fox Theater there in 2005. It was a later screening that I didn't see that on opening day, but on opening day I saw it local to me. So there's a lot of firsts when it comes to Star Wars, especially this prequel series for me. So I know, yes, I was around for the original prequels when they came, the original trilogy when it came out. So I know this youthful face, makes you think that I'm so much younger than I really am. But yeah, I'm old. There's lots of little pieces of dialogue that inform so much more. And like I said before, this film is the most tied to continuity than any of the other films, because it literally does, more than anything, have to set up the characters and situations, the Empire, the rise of the Emperor, the fall of Darth Vader, Anakin, and everything else, so that it can't be incongruous with the original trilogy. The first two films, they can play around. There's a little bit more leeway. There's the building of the clone army. That's a thing that the nerds like me really wanted to see how that all happened. Oh, the Clone Wars. Obi-Wan mentioned the Clone Wars in the first film. And there's things like, oh yeah, when the last time I saw you, I was a student and you were the master. Like all that stuff. You realize that if Obi-Wan at the end of this film believes that Anakin is dead, how is it that he knows that Darth Vader is Anakin in the original trilogy? Well, that had to be bridged, and that story was told in the Obi-Wan series. That kind of, I know we take some of that stuff for granted, but it was actually interestingly bridged in the Obi-Wan story. So yeah, I like I said, this is far from a perfect film. The prequel trilogy is far from a perfect trilogy. It's not my favorite trilogy either, but there are some people who grew up with it. Just as I grew up with the original, some people grew up with this trilogy, and they love it to death. And that is a fantastic thing. If you have a passion for Star Wars, and it's because of this prequel trilogy, if it's because of Revenge of the Sith, the best of that trilogy, then go for it. Enjoy it. Embrace it. Don't let anybody tell you that your opinion sucks. The original trilogy's better. Don't let them tell you what to love. If you love it with all your heart, go for it. That's the way it is with any bit of fandom. Yes, you can like Star Wars and Star Trek at the same time. Love any one of the Doctors from Doctor Who that you want. So when it comes to fandom, when it comes to loving the things you love, especially when it comes to Star Wars, don't follow to the haters. Just it's an exercise that's just needlessly exhausting, and just love what you love. The people, and again, most of the people who make all these 20-minute videos like I'm about to make, who usually make videos this long about Star Wars stuff, tend to be people who choose to capitalize on anger and capitalize on making a controversial, which isn't, they're not controversial anymore, trying to make a controversial teardown of something that people love. So people go, oh, what does he say about that? I gotta, that's, odds are some people are probably watching this video, all three of you, watching this video just so they can tear it apart or get, figure out what kind of crappy thing I'm going to say about Star Wars as well. I'm not that person. I love Star Wars in every way, shape, and form. Not all of it's great, but it's all good. So I highly recommend, if you haven't watched any Star Wars, and I don't know why you'd be watching this if you've never watched any Star Wars, but if I say, regardless of the opinions, including mine, regardless of the opinions that exist out there, watch them again. If you haven't watched them for decades, it's time to watch them again. And especially if kids that have never seen it before, it's time to watch it through new eyes and see if it's something that really connects with them. And that can be a beautiful thing to share with kids. I have friends who have kids that are very small right now, and we are building to that time when they are ready to watch Star Wars. They've watched the Bad Batch. They've watched some of the Clone Wars. They've watched the Young Jedi Adventures, all the little stuff for the kids. But they haven't watched the films yet, and I'm looking forward to experiencing that with them when they're old enough to, one, really become passionate about the real movies, the core movies, and fall in love with them, hopefully. If they don't, they don't. Maybe they like Hot Wheels for the rest of their lives, and that's cool. Monster trucks, go for it. But for me, this is, someday I want to be able to talk old school, new school, whatever generation of Star Wars. Their Star Wars is Young Jedi Adventures and The Bad Batch, which is really dark right now, by the way, and all these other things. It's a beautiful thing. So, yeah, I hope I can get this up before midnight. Let's pick tomorrow's episode. And I know I forgot a bunch of stuff I wanted to say about this. I'm really sorry. 207. I'm sorry because I could go on for hours. Some of you may know that. Yeah, I could go for hours about talking about Star Wars and every little facet, arguing every little tiny detail. But I seek every good thing from these films because I love them and I enjoy them. I want to, when I go into a Star Wars film, I don't go in with my arms crossed. I'm going to just analyze this as a filmmaker. No, I'm going into it to have fun. I'm getting on a ride, like in a park, like a Disneyland. I'm going on a ride because I want to enjoy it. I don't want to hate it. That's what these films are meant to be. So take joy in the things that you love and are passionate about, that you're geeky about. That's all I gotta say. Tomorrow, we're gonna be watching Pride from Above. Yes, this is a documentary about, Pride celebrations, which generally happen in June, so we're a little bit early, and we'll be talking about that. I guess there's flyovers? I don't know. But we'll see what that's all about. Pride from Above on the next Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that.